For those who haven't been following us, we are Spark, a youth-led nonprofit organization founded in 2018 to engage students in the world of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We normally host an annual 24-hour hackathon, but with the pandemic as an obstacle, we hosted the event on a virtual platform in August and called it Spark from Home.
Here with us, we have Parths Sareen, a mechatronics engineering student at the University of Waterloo and an experienced software engineer intern who's worked with leading tech companies at the forefront of innovation. Welcome, Parth.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
All right, so Parth, let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So much like yourself, I was very interested in engineering, math, and all the good stuff in high school that you kind of look back on and look upon fondly. So props on you guys for kind of, getting the head start on that. I also did a lot of engineering things when I was in high school, and I didn't really kind of think about that I was enjoying doing, a lot of these engineering kind of tasks that I would take on. So like a lot of it was in grade 11, I built this Rube Goldberg machine with a bunch of friends for the Science Olympics. We did like Western Science Olympics. It was a good time. A lot of different building kind of challenges was what I would take on. And I never really thought about, taking on engineering as my career until like I stumbled upon one of my uncles, and he gave me a lot of great advice, and I ended up coming into engineering. And so going into Waterloo, I knew that I'd be as part of the co-op program. And so before I even went to university, I took on this co-op right after grade 12, which was about IoT hardware development, which was really cool and super interesting. I worked at SAP for that. Then I got to university, and my first co-op was at Ritual in downtown Toronto, which was a good time. I was doing QA as well as analytics from like scripting work, which was pretty interesting, and got to learn a lot there. I also like worked really hard that term to, learn more about machine learning, try and understand like different things about software. I did a few hackathons in that time. And for my next co-op, I ended up being at Deloitte doing natural language processing, machine learning, and backend, which was a really good time as well. Then after that, I worked at Tesla doing software engineering for the energy side of things. I was working on a couple things called Autobidder and the solar inverter. Both of them are now kind of public, so that was really cool to see. And currently I'm at Apple doing software engineering as well, but more on the device level side of things, which is super interesting for Siri.
Yeah, so like I've noticed you have a very extensive internship experience. Could you tell us a little bit more about your recent internship periods that you've done?
Yeah, sure. Which one would you want to learn more about?
Tesla, Apple, those are like the really big names that actually stuck out to me.
Sure. So while I do talk about these two companies, I would like to make it clear that these opinions are my own. I gotta have the disclaimer out there. But as kind of overall, both companies. Currently, I'm at Apple. It's been about a month since I've started working. My experience here has been super great until now. Been learning so much stuff. I usually do more like server-side development work, and so working on more of the device level stuff is completely new. I'm working in Objective-C, just learning a lot of cool things. At my last internship at Tesla, that was hands down the smartest group of people I've ever worked with. It was a very senior team. And so just like the way people think and the way people work was just so different from anything I've ever come across before. It was an amazing experience because it completely rewired how I would think about solving problems and how I would tackle them. And so I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it too. You know, like tech is cool, like you get to learn new technologies and, you know, you pick up a new programming language every term or here and there. But I think it's a lot about, you know, people and who you work with. So both at Apple and Tesla, just the people here are so smart. Um, and everybody, like, I think that's true for like every co-op. Like we get to work with a lot of smart people, but specifically for Tesla and Apple, like, and even more so for Tesla, just like that group was just so smart. My growth was exponential at that company. I haven't finished Apple yet, so I guess I'll be seeing how that goes. But the learning opportunities are endless once you're on an internship.
Yeah, I've always thought of like those two companies to be very interesting. Just hearing about them in the stock market, hearing about like technologies that they produce. But I heard that you're working with renewable energy in Australia for Tesla, and you're working with Siri now for Apple, which you can't talk about because you're under NDA, right?
Yep,
But
yep.
yeah, like what do you think about the futures of those technologies specifically? You don't have to speak too much about Apple, but what do you think?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna leave Apple out of this one because I'm not trying to break any NDA. But for Tesla, I think overall, even just like not looking at it from a Tesla perspective, I think clean energy is going to be a very huge space. Clean energy, and you know, overall AGIs are going to be super, super big things in the next 5 to 10 years. I feel like we're already seeing like machine learning becoming more available to even just like high school students like you guys, right? Like you, even if you wanted today to dive into machine learning, you could without, you know, needing to understand a lot of the math that goes behind it. And I think that's awesome. You know, making tech available to people who you know, aren't as deep into it is great because those are the people who are going to innovate with that technology and apply it to different fields that, you know, normally engineers wouldn't do. And I think um, the more available it becomes to new people, the better it's going to be for everyone else. So um, from clean energy perspective, so that's like machine learning. Clean energy, I feel like, is also going to be a great thing. And there's a lot of work being done, not just by Tesla, but by other companies as well, who are, you know, trying to push forward with the entire kind of clean energy goal. And I think that is also super, super important because, you know, burning fossil fuels is just not sustainable. We've seen that in the net last, you know, how many ever years. And so pushing forward on that front is really, really important. And personally, renewable energy and just like sustainable tech is something of passion of mine. So I'm definitely always looking out for, you know, opportunities to try and tackle problems in that area.
All right, and the last Tesla specific question: have you met Elon Musk personally?
I have not. Background on both Tesla and Apple. So my Tesla internship was in the summer of 2020, which you know was also the height of the pandemic, especially in California. And so I did not get to go to California. I was sitting in my home in Toronto, working remote. And currently I'm sitting in Waterloo working remote for Apple as well. So unfortunately did not get to meet Elon. However, I did get to email him and I got a response to my email, which was, I think, a pretty close second. So that was
Yeah,
a
yeah,
good time.
definitely.
Like,
That was nice.
speaking,
Um,
yeah, sorry, continue.
sorry, go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking about Tesla, right? You said how your experience at Tesla was kind of new and how everyone around you was like really smart and all. Do you believe it's just because like how like the people that who hire interns at Tesla are hired differently, like look for different capabilities in interns, possibly?
I think this applies to, this is a good kind of piece of advice. I think it applies to pretty much any company. I think the team matters more than a company because the way the team works is just very different. And sometimes, you know, a team will do things slightly differently than the rest of the company. And so my team at Tesla, the person who was leading it was just super, super experienced. He had a vision for the team, and every single day was super interesting to go back to. And I think because he was such a good leader, the way he did hiring, and how he did a lot of his things, kind of helped stand out from my other internships. And even just like going back and like how he did hiring for even just full-time engineers was very different than how Tesla does hiring for other people. And so I think since the vetting process is different, and the way you kind of identify good engineers and good potential engineers, which is basically what interns are, I think that definitely helped stand out for how the team worked overall.
Yeah, that definitely does make sense. Just a question in my mind was like, how valuable are like are interns in general to a company like Tesla or Apple? Because like
Yeah.
there's experienced engineers, right? And then there's just interns who might just be coming off from their university or something. So
Oh yeah.
some people are just confused, like how important are they really to these companies?
So yeah, that's a good question. Um, so I think at startups, you probably know, like, interns definitely do a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think that still stands true for a lot of these bigger companies, especially Tesla and Apple, because I've been there. The project that you get at both companies, at least from my experience, has been something that they actually want. Whether sometimes your project might be a little bit more exploratory, where this is an area that they really need scoped out, and you as an intern spend your 4 months looking into this new area, scoping it out, and coming up with ideas on how to build the entire system. Then I'm not going to talk about what I'm doing at Apple right now, but for Tesla, I definitely was, working on some pretty important things. And like some of the features that I was writing are currently in production, and, supporting a lot of tasks and supporting a lot of products. And I think that was really, really cool. And you don't get to do that at other big companies necessarily. Just, from what I've heard, sometimes you get stuck on like a very, very small project that nobody ever will see. Even that, to be honest, like just having the opportunity to work with some really, really smart engineers is probably the main thing. Also, another thing is that the reason you intern or you do co-ops at different companies is not just for like helping the company at that point. The company is kind of investing in you as well, in your internships, so that they can invite you back for full time. And now you're this brandished engineer who's ready to kind of go into the workforce. You've worked at the company before, and you have the experience necessary to like hit the ground running, rather than a new grad that they're going to hire completely randomly, and with who they do not know from before. And so internships are super, super crucial because, let's say, for example, you wanted to work at IBM after graduation. You'd probably want to intern at IBM at some point so that you can get a feel for the company. And if you really like it, then you try and make the conversion from an intern to full time. And that really is the goal, oftentimes for internships as well. And that's why companies like to invest in you as well.
Yeah, that's definitely I agree with that because I have a cousin, right? He the goal is always to like do well in the internship and then go higher and try get that accepting position, right? As a full-time
Yeah.
engineer at the location. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. So would you like to go on now?
Yeah, so now that like we've heard quite a bit about your internship experience, could you just give us some like final tips on for eager like high school and university students that are already thinking about internships, not at the same companies, but
Mhm.
um, what are some things that have worked for you in the past to land these internships?
Yes, sure. So I'm a big proponent of networking. I think networking is a great way to kind of understand how the industry works, especially as a high school student. Like for me, I did this program called Junior Achievement, which you guys may know of. where you start your own company and you get to, ideate and launch a product from scratch. And I did that for 2 years in a row, grade 11 and 12 at SAP. And knowing that I wanted to go into kind of engineering, SAP, also doing a lot of software as a service, and doing a lot of engineering work as well, I kind of made the connections to take on a co-op there. And I think having that experience before I went into university kind of really helped me leverage that for my new internships. So I think, reaching out to people, understanding kind of how they do their stuff, how you want to learn more about the industry, and how you can possibly even become an intern there. I think networking is a great way to go, using LinkedIn or Twitter to reach out to people, talk to them, have coffee chats, understand who they are, and also understand, what their work is like. Especially as a high school student, I think, people are a lot more open to talking to high school students than they are to university students, because high school students are a lot more moldable into different ways, and a lot more eager and open-minded, in my opinion, than university students, because you don't have this kind of preconception of how things are supposed to be, and you're a lot more open-minded to new things.
Right. So networking can only get you so far, though. I understand that it's a very important skill, but what happens once you land the interview? What do you think recruiters value the most?
Well, it depends. So sometimes you're not even going to be talking to the recruiter. You're just going to be doing your engineering interviews, right? And at that point, if you're doing an engineering interview, you're basically just grinding out leak code, and depending on what kind of questions the company asks, like focusing on those kind of points. Whereas, if it's more of a general interview, you're going to practice more of your general skills. If it's a general problem solving interview, you're just going to be practicing your respective skills. For any kind of person, I think, especially for engineering, having a problem solving mindset is really important, obviously, because that's your daily job. But at the same time, I think communication and leadership are also two qualities that really make a great engineer, because and communication especially, and a lot of people don't look at it that way, because not only are you supposed to communicate as you're writing code, and not only is your code a representation of um, your thoughts and ideas, but also communicating what you've done to other engineers, documentation, writing things, ideating things, coming up with ideas on how to architect an entire system, how do you build a project from scratch. A lot of those things come over time, but those are things which can be practiced, and you can get better at with an effort. And those things are often also tested in interviews as well. So that's definitely a big thing to focus on as well.
Yeah. And I just wanted to ask, like, is it better to learn the necessary skills and languages before going to the actual company and working with them, or is it better to like have be proficient in, let's say, one language and then move on and adapt to the language that is required at their company?
So are you talking about this before interview, or let's say you have your offer and then you're talking about going into
Let's
the
say you
company?
have your offer and then you're gonna go.
Okay, sure. So at Tesla, my team wrote in Scala, which is this functionally written language, which I really enjoyed. Before I went in, I did do a course just from like Udemy on how Scala works, on like things I can do with it. So it definitely made my life a little bit easier when I went into it, and all the code wasn't just like mumbo jumbo, and I could actually understand it. Um, and I recommend. I think it's good to kind of build a solid understanding of at least the basics of how the code works. Whereas Apple was a little bit different. I had initially thought I was going to be doing C++ server side, and so I was brushing up more of my C++ skills. But then I came in and they're like, nope, we're doing Objective-C for device level. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I just shifted my focus on device level. Although what you're going to do is when you are actually working at a company, you don't, just write code from scratch. You also have a lot of reference points from like other people's code that you use and incorporate into your own ideas. You, this is this has been true for every internship I've had. And so you have a starting point. You definitely take a look at other people's code, understand how they write their patterns, and you incorporate some of them. And so that's basically how you learn to write a language as well. Um, Definitely agree being good at one kind of language specifically, being super proficient in it is extremely important because once you're good at one language, the idea stays the same. They're just like applied differently in different languages. So just get good at one or maybe two, like maybe one high level slash scripting is what I recommend, and then one lower level. So for me, I write Python and C, and so that's kind of my thing. I'm trying to make the switch from C because I don't want to deal with pointers anymore, like the way C does it. So I'm trying to pick up Rust because Rust has been this really cool language, and so yeah, that's like a few things I'm kind of messing around with these days.
All right, thanks for that. Yeah. Okay, so now we'll be asking you a couple more questions, general questions. So moving on to some personal passions about yours. So we noticed that you had a great passion for public speaking, right? The last time I spoke publicly was during my speech competition in grade 8, where I made a speech about why you should not eat meat, and the judges kind of gave me a stare. So I just wanted to know, and the audience would like to know as well, what are some good topics to like talk about when you like talking publicly?
That's interesting. Well, Mo, the first thing I want to know is, do you still eat meat after giving that talk?
Oh, no, I was a vegetarian, so it was fine for me.
You've been a vegetarian since day one. It was all good. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say when you are giving a talk on anything, or even just like take this for an example, right? Um, it's a lot about talking about your passion and something that you're good at. Per se, either good at or passion are the two things I think about because you can pretty much talk on end for both of those things, right? If you're knowledgeable about a topic, then you can keep talking about it. And if you're knowledgeable and passionate about something, so like just career development and software engineering in general, especially internships, are kind of my thing these days. And so I can pretty much go on length about any of those topics, and I definitely do on LinkedIn as well with Augment. Or at least I used to when we would do our kind of live sessions, and people would just kind of drop in. We did one with me, my friend Neil, and Anastasia, who's a Tesla recruiter, did this live on Augment a while back, and it was about these common misconceptions that people would face when applying to jobs, and a lot of this kind of student mindset versus what the recruiter thinks, and putting them together, what's the best way to approach applying to jobs, and all these different kind of things, and you pretty much just talk about it, and that's kind of more of the public speaking I kind of do. It's more about these different talks that I do. I recently gave a talk at Hack the North. I did more so a workshop on just like how do you network to land an awesome internship. You can actually find that on YouTube. But that was great. It was a good experience. Got to interact with a bunch of hackers and really give like the best pieces of advice that I've picked up over the last 3-4 years. Kind of tailor it down and provide an understandable chunk of like an hour rather than me rambling about it for a while, or you trying to scroll through LinkedIn and you're trying to find the best piece of advice, which is very, very hard to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of Hackathons and hackathons in general, what type of projects have you seen so far that usually have a tendency to win hackathons?
Oh boy. Um, Honestly, I don't think there's a tendency to win. It's about, coming up with ideas and putting it together and the execution. And honestly, what a lot of people don't see is the presentation.
Mhm.
More than how good your project is, the presentation needs to be bomb. I've won a couple hackathons myself, and both of those times, better, like more than the actual stuff that we built, it was what we presented and how we presented it that kind of got us that edge. Yeah, like I remember I won an Xbox at McHacks, which was nice, and then I sold it and bought a Switch, which was great. Um, because I think hackathons are a great way to go build stuff and learn new technologies. And I think more than winning, it's more about picking up a new skill. So at McHacks, where I did win, I also learned backend development in Python, and that helped me get my next co-op. So none of that really goes to waste. You get to try out a new technology. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, oh well, you tried and you learned, right? It's kind of the mindset that I go into hackathons with. I don't do hackathons anymore. They're a little bit too tiring for me now. But earlier, you grind them out, stay awake for like 48 hours, and you just go at it, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially high schoolers, right? They should be attending hackathons because they can get a lot of experience and like just interconnect with a lot of people, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I actually did one hackathon in high school. Two hackathons in high school, and I really, really enjoyed both. I think the first one I did was like right after grade 10, and the second one was either in 11 or 12. And both of them were like super great experiences. Got to, try out a bunch of development work. And I, actually, funny story is like back in grade 12, I never wanted to do software engineering at all. I was all about hardware and that I wanted to do hardware, which is kind of the big reason I picked mechatronics. Got into mechatronics, did hardware interviews, but I always had more success with software. And so I kind of just naturally went to that area a little bit more than hardware. So that's just how it ended up working out. But hackathons, yes, great way to gain experience, especially for high school students. Highly recommend, especially if you're like into STEM.
Thank you, Parth. Before we continue, we'd like to thank this week's highlighted sponsor, Wolfram, the company behind the intelligent Wolfram language. This computational intelligence is best featured in their signature product, Wolfram Alpha. With 30 plus years of research and development, this smart calculator can compute expert level answers to virtually any question you give it. Need to know the calories in a cubic light year of ice cream or the shaking frequency of a 50-pound wet dog? Wolfram can find it within seconds. Thank you to Wolfram for your generous support this year.
Now it's time to announce the winner of our contest on Instagram. This episode's question was, what's the longest you have gone without sleeping at a hackathon? And the winner is Bianca. Congrats, Bianca. Make sure to follow at Spark Hacks on Instagram for more updates and contests.
Thank you for your participation and advice so far. We just wanted to move into our quick game segment now, the Would You
Yeah,
Rather
let's do it.
questions. So, to get right into it, now, would you rather want Siri or Alexa if you were stranded somewhere and that was the only form of help?
I mean, I think I'm a little biased for this one, but I obviously want Siri.
Okay.
All right, next one. Would you rather do app design or web design?
Interesting. So when you say app design, are you talking about like more mobile apps?
I guess so, yeah. Mobile app
Okay.
design.
I think currently I'm leaning more towards web design. From backend perspective, neither of them from a front end perspective, because building UI is just not my thing.
Would you rather save Elon Musk or Tim Cook from drowning?
Oh boy. I'm sorry, Tim. I think it's gonna have to be Elon.
Do you think Elon is better
I mean,
for cleaning?
I might drown myself because I don't know how to swim, but like you get the idea.
Okay, I get it.
All right, now this is a very important question, okay? Would you rather binge watch Friends or The Office?
Oh man. I have seen a little bit of seen a little bit of both. I think I like Friends more, so I'd binge watch Friends.
Yes.
And lastly, would you rather be as smart as Bruce Banner or Tony Stark?
Tony Stark, dude. Like literally, part of the reason why I'm in mechatronics is because of Iron Man. We literally watched it last night to kind of relive the process between picking a program.
That's the only correct answer. Good job.
Oh yeah.
All right, now it's just like a wrapping up question. So, what advice would you give to people who are just entering the field of technology, or just like, let's say, grade nines, right, who just are interested in engineering and stuff like that? What advice would you give to those?
Yeah. I think the biggest things that kind of helped me along the way, and you know, these may or may not work for you, but I think based off of experience, this is something that a lot of people have liked. And you know, I've seen people do well on it. I think a lot of it is, you know, if you're interested in something, use your resources. Google is an amazing resource. Like the co-ops that I mentor at the startup I work at, biggest like takeaway from any internship is, you know, how to Google well, how to Google your own problems well, and you know, use that to um, solve what you're working on. And so if you're interested in, like, let's say machine learning in grade nine, you know, like literally do a course on machine learning and then build projects along it. If you're interested in, you know, like robotics and you actually want to build something, you know, maybe get an Arduino and, you know, build like a robotic arm. There is, and the thing is, like, there's so many resources online. There are people that you can talk to on LinkedIn. You can reach out to people if you need help. A lot of your teachers in high school would also be very, very supportive of the endeavors you kind of take on with these kind of things. So you know, ask them. Like in high school, my physics teachers both times kind of helped me ideate a lot of these things I was thinking about, or like my computer engineering teacher in grade 11 kind of pushed me into going into Arduino and, you know, picking that up and like building stuff with it. And I think that was the best way to learn too, because you know, you get your hands dirty, you, whether it's software or hardware or mechanical, whatever it may be, and you really kind of get to dive into a lot of these different experiences. And I think that's super, super important. So biggest thing is, you know, as an engineer, the biggest job you do is building things. So start building things.
Thanks, Parth, for everything. That's all the questions that we have today. And make sure to follow Parth on Twitter at Parthserene _ and LinkedIn at Parthserene.
And as always, you can find Spark on our website, startthespark.ca, Instagram at SparkHacks, and on LinkedIn at Spark.
Stay tuned for our next and final episode on Spark After Hours, where we bring another awesome guest. Spark, signing out.